When I was about 5 years old, I remember seeing an obscure film so terrifying that it genuinely traumatized me for the rest of my childhood. And now, over 2 decades later, not only did I find it, but I managed to get in touch with the director.
You were 5 years old? We need to talk to your mom.
Honestly, I cannot stress enough how much it affected me. In fact, let's call my mom. Ти помниш ли този филм, дед ме изплаши?
Да, това ти държеше влага, може би 10 години.
It was bad. People had to coordinate with each other and work around their schedules just to make sure that at any given moment there was someone with me in the house. I simply could not be home alone.
Ние сме имали гости и ти си го гледал сам и се стресирал. И после въобще никъде не щеше сам. И като стане тъмно, страхта беше.
And the biggest irony was that I couldn't even remember anything about the movie. Maybe it was my brain suppressing the memory as some sort of a defense mechanism that clearly wasn't working, but at some point I wasn't even sure if me seeing the film actually happened or it was just a nightmare I had. Except there was this one specific moment that really stuck with me. This one scene that I couldn't even visualize but just about put together, of a living room inside of a dark house with some aliens slowly walking into it. That is all I remember, together with the feeling that it was real. I don't think I realized it was a movie.
Аз разбрах после вече, когато почна да плачеш и да ми викаш да ме дърпаш, оле, мамо, извън ти да ме взимат, оле, мамо.
So, as the years went on, I was slowly getting over it until eventually I hit puberty and had other things to worry about. And since then, I had completely forgotten about it. Until one day, I received a seemingly random comment in one of my YouTube videos. There was a movie from the late 90s which was aired late at night, had no opening credits, and it was presented as a real-life abduction that looked super convincing. Reading that immediately kicked off this wave of memories that had been locked away for all those years, and I thought to myself, there is no way. But I looked up the name, and the moment I saw that photo, I knew for a fact that I've seen that house before. Only if you could have seen the look on my face. It was like my entire concept of reality collapsed. And now, it was time to not only face my fear, but talk to the very person who created it. So, you get some sick enjoyment out of traumatizing the new generation.
Well, again, we need to talk to your mom. She should be paying half of your therapy bills at least.
Alright, there it is. It's called the McPherson Tape and it is a really low budget film from 1989. It says on the back that it was made for just $6,000 by first-time filmmaker Dean Alioto, who was in his early 20s back then. And it all takes place in a single night when the McPherson family is celebrating the birthday of 5-year-old Michelle, and a power outage turns out to be an actual alien invasion. To be honest, it wasn't nearly as scary this time around. I even tracked my heart rate to prove how brave I've gotten, but what's interesting is that rather than scared, I was actually fascinated with this movie. Right off the bat, I can see exactly why it felt so real. It's a found footage. No wonder it got me. It looks like an actual home video from the 1980s. And ironically, because of how amateur it is, whether by design or, let's be real, necessity, this may be one of the most groundbreaking films I've ever seen. Hold on. Yeah, this is the Blair Witch Project, probably one of the most famous found footage films there is, and to a lot of people, the first one of the genre, or at least the first one to really make it to the mainstream. But apparently that is not where it started, because the McPherson Tape came out a whole decade before it, in the late 80s, when the term found footage didn't even exist. It was so far ahead of its time that it couldn't even get a distribution deal for years, because most producers saw it as a home video rather than an actual real movie.
There was one woman at Vestron, which was this big VHS distribution company, and we showed her like the trailer that we had for it. And she told me, "Don't you ever come here and waste my time again. I don't want to see you ever again unless you have a real movie." So we went back home with our tail between our legs and, thought that was it. In fact, even before then, one of the actors in the film, Jason, who plays the middle child, the college kid, his mom was the casting director for the film. And I showed her a sneak peek. She was the first one to ever see it. After watching, she says, "Wow, I got to be honest with you. If you want my honest opinion," I go, yeah, please. She says, "That's the most amateurish thing I have ever seen. Everyone's talking over each other. It's all handheld. It's dark. I can't see anything. This is not what I expected at all. I'm just going to be honest with you, this is horrible."
Since then, obviously found footage became really popular, and whether you notice it or not, also more sleek. It's made to look authentic, but you can kind of feel how well it's planned, produced, and there's always this very convenient, perfect timing. But in my opinion, the reason why this one is so groundbreaking is not only because it may be arguably the first one to do it, but because of how committed it was to realism. There are so many things in that film that on the surface level look like amateur mistakes, which again, very well may be, but at the same time, they're exactly what makes it work. It is filmed kind of terribly, but that's the point. It's a teenager who had just bought his first camera. He just randomly zooms in and out of things because it's fun, and I promise you, when I got my first camera, that was exactly what I did. He just films whatever catches his eye, and at one point we spent like a minute with him just washing his hands. Or oftentimes it's dark for a few minutes, it's shaky, it's chaotic, it's all over the place, and on more than a few occasions it gets kind of mundane, which is exactly how a home video would. The point is, it feels real, and apparently 5-year-old me was not the only one fooled by it.
I felt that the tape might be real because it fit in very well with so many UFO alien incidences that I know of.
In the DVD, there are also some extras, which are honestly even more interesting than the film itself, because it turned into a huge hoax that had all kinds of people, from researchers to an actual army colonel, fully convinced it was real.
I have been studying UFOs for 42 years and I've got a pretty good track record. I thought that it did not have the appearance of being a scripted production because everybody was talking at the same time and you couldn't understand half of what they said. If they were actors, they ought to get an Oscar or an Emmy.
So, long story short, Dean Alioto, the director, really wanted to make his very first feature film before he turned 25.
I had a buddy of mine that said, "Look, I've got $6,500. Can you, do a movie with this?" And I scoffed at that because at the time there were no DSLR cameras. There were no phones that are today that you can easily shoot a movie. So I said, "Look, the only thing I can shoot with that is a wedding video." And then I read Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. And that book, his memoir of his alleged abductions by non-human intelligent beings, freaked the hell out of me. And so I came back to him, I said, "Look, I have an idea. I want to insert an audience into what that would actually be like." And because of that, the idea of a first-person thing, which is kind of an extension, really, of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, where he does this radio show, right, in the 30s, and it was believed to be real, and it was played straight. And I thought, okay, what if I use that device here and just have it be a kid's home video camera where he just got this camera? So I just wrote out like a 10 or 20 page outline of all the scenes, and then I cast actors. Some of them had improv resumes, and so I didn't really have a choice to try to have it be this contrived thing. It was just gut instinct and wanting to express myself in any way I could at the time.
So the McPherson tape was pretty much the only thing he could actually afford, but as mentioned, found footage didn't even exist back then, so basically every distributor turned him down. Eventually, he finally managed to convince someone, but right after they made the copies, the warehouse, together with the original master, unfortunately burnt down.
And so I thought that was a film god saying, move on. Nice try, kid. And then, 5 years later, I get 3 or 5 years later, I get this call from this guy who just left this UFO convention, the biggest UFO convention apparently in the world. And then that started the whole conspiracy theories around it.
Apparently, right before the warehouse burned down, some advanced copies could have been sent to different rental stores, and someone thought it may be funny to just cut out the beginning and ending credits and pass it along to the UFO community as a real, authentic, genuine tape.
And so I ended up going on national TV on this Fox show called Encounters, and I debunked my own film, because I know there's a lot of serious UFO researchers out there, and they don't need to have, hoaxes, there.
We hired 8-year-old little girls to be in these suits. I didn't intend for this to be a hoax at all. My goal was to set out to make the most realistic UFO abduction tape possible, but this was beyond my wildest dreams.
Probably the funniest or maybe the scariest part of this, depends how you want to look at it, is that even after Dean Alioto went to the news and said it was just a film and showed behind the scenes footage to prove it, people still chose to believe what they wanted to believe and just accused him of lying.
There's really something inside me that really is not convinced that parts of it are not real.
I am not convinced the thing is a hoax because I know that our government policy is to insert disinformation into every major UFO case or released a document.
I would go online kind of as a hobby, and I would just say, hey, here's the kids in the costume. Hey, here's some behind the scenes. This is fake. But, at some point you just kind of go, this isn't my project. This isn't my film anymore. This is the zeitgeist. This is the world's film. So you just grab your surfboard and try to stay on it.
Wow. This is honestly hilarious. It's so funny how some films might work so hard to prove something is real, and you do the exact opposite. But I still want to say, honestly, thank you for making that film, because I think this is, as much as it is appreciated, I think it is vastly underappreciated, both for how groundbreaking it is, how far ahead of its time it was, but also because of how much genius I think there is in its simplicity and its execution. It's just such a brilliant film. I really believe that. And ironically, I ended up becoming a huge fan of horror and found footage. And I think subconsciously, it is probably because of that film, because it's my earliest memory of seeing a film. I'm pretty sure that's the first film I ever saw.
Yeah. It's what's funny is I almost want to do a video on the reaction of people that have seen it, because you're not the only one that saw it, at an early age. I have tons of people that email me and say, I still sleep with a nightlight on. But when you're a kid and you see a movie like, as an example, the McPherson Tape or Alien Abduction, Incident Lake County, you bring to it such a huge margin of imagination to it. And because there's kids in it as well, there's that identifying thing, that it becomes this co-creation. And I had to learn that over the years, that when I'm writing and I'm working on projects, I don't need to push so hard. I just need to go halfway in the bridge as a filmmaker and let the audience figure out everything and not spell it out like studio movies do. And so it alleviates a lot of pressure for a filmmaker to say, oh, I can present, I don't have to spell everything out, and let them fertilize their own imagination. Don't spell it out, and don't underestimate your audience. And so that's the biggest thing that I kind of learned from all of this, and the takeaway for me.
And now that I talked with Dean, I can finally say that I'm healed. It was just a film, something that we definitely cannot say about Roar, one of the most dangerous movies ever made. It is truly an absolutely crazy story, and you can check out my video about it right now.